Reading from the Lord's Word is from the book, The Doctrine of Faith, and is part of a summary of Christian faith. The universal obligation of the Christian faith on the part of humankind is to believe in the Lord. For to believe in Him brings about a conjunction with Him which makes salvation possible. Moreover, to believe in Him is to be confident that He will save. And because to have this confidence is possible only to someone who lives right, therefore this too is meant by believing in Him. And today's final reading is from the book Arcana Celestia and is part of an explanation of the statement from the book of Revelation. I saw standing before the throne and before the Lamb those clothed in white robes. And we read, the truth of faith does not exist with any who believe that they have faith of themselves, and so believe that they are wise of themselves. Rather, it exists with those who believe that their faith and wisdom come from the Lord. For faith and wisdom are imparted to them because they do not ascribe any truth or goodness to themselves. Even less do they believe that they possess any merit through the truths and goods residing with them, and less still any righteousness, but only by ascribing these to the Lord, and so everything to His grace and mercy. This is what putting on white garments means, and also what being made white in the blood of the Lamb means. There are two things which all who enter heaven cast aside, namely their proprium and consequent confidence, and merit that is their own, or self-righteousness. They then assume a heavenly proprium which comes from the Lord, and the Lord's merit, or righteousness. And to the extent that these are so assumed, those persons advance further into heaven. Amen. If we were to describe Gideon's personality as it appears in today's story, one thing we'd probably all agree is that he lacks confidence. Everything about the way that he's presented plays into this. When we meet him, he's literally hiding. He's threshing wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. Wheat's usually threshed on a threshing floor, but because the Midianites have free reign of the land and are stealing everything, Gideon's threshing his wheat in an unusual place to keep it hidden. The angel of the Lord greets him boldly, but Gideon's response, and the first thing we ever hear him say, is an expression of hopelessness and bitterness. If the Lord is with us, then why has all this happened to us? And where are the miracles our fathers told us about? The clearest evidence of his lack of confidence is his response when the angel of the Lord tells him that he has been chosen to save Israel. To this, Gideon answers, "My Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house." Gideon's story, then, is a story of the Lord saving His people by means of someone who identifies himself as the weakest of the weakest. And really that's the theme or the message of this story, that the Lord saves by means of something that identifies itself as the least of the least. Today's sermon is the first of a series of 4 on the story of Gideon, and we'll see that theme picked up again later. The Lord chose Gideon to be His champion, and obviously He had good reasons for that. But the way that Gideon seems to feel about himself is probably not something that we would ever choose. His conviction that he is the least important member of this unimportant family doesn't really seem healthy. Confidence is something that pretty much everybody wants. We're taught from an early age that it's something we should want. We're taught to see a connection between confidence and success, and between confidence and happiness even. And if we don't feel confident, we often wind up envying those who do seem to. But does the Lord want us to be confident? Well, on the one hand, the answer to that has to be yes. Confidence is a good thing. Confidence is the ability to believe that we're capable of doing what we need to do. And confidence feels good. And the Lord wants us to do what we need to do. And He wants us to feel good. To say that the Lord doesn't want us to be confident would be to suggest that He wants us to be stuck in fear and in doubt. And clearly that is not what God wants. On the other hand, it's not that hard to imagine ways in which confidence could become less than a good thing in God's eyes. There are a lot of stories in literature and mythology about people who were too confident, people whose confidence became pride. And usually in these stories, people end up getting punished for their pride, either by their own actions or directly by the gods. Pride isn't spoken of very well in the Word either. And it's certainly possible to take from the Word the idea that the Lord wants us to be the dead opposite of proud. That He wants us to be humble in a way that seems to have nothing to do with confidence. Blessed are the meek, He says. So in summary, confidence sure seems like a good thing, but we can see ways that it can become less than a good thing. If it becomes pride, it becomes a bad thing. What we should want for ourselves then is to be confident without being proud. Now that's easy enough to say, but if we look honestly at ourselves, there's a good chance we'll find that it's not as easy to do. Because what is our confidence founded on, if not an awareness of our own ability and competence and self-sufficiency? And if we feel competent and self-sufficient, isn't there a feeling of power underlying that? And a feeling of power is really hard to separate from pride. Up until now, I've been speaking of confidence as though it means the same thing as self-confidence, but it doesn't have to. And clearly, the confidence that the Lord wants us to have is not self-confidence. That first reading from the Heavenly Doctrines, from the Doctrine of Faith, said that the universal obligation of the Christian faith on the part of humankind is to believe in the Lord. And to believe in Him is to be confident that He will save. And this is one of many, many passages that puts confidence and faith in the Lord side by side. To believe in the Lord is to have confidence in Him, to be confident that He will save. And so the confidence that we're to have then is really the same thing as trust in the Lord. The second reading from the Heavenly Doctrines, from Arcana Celestia, says that those who enter heaven are those who give up self-confidence. There are two things which all who enter heaven cast aside, namely their proprium and consequent confidence, and merit that is their own, or self-righteousness. Confidence that comes from the proprium means confidence rising out of our faith in our own power and our own abilities. In other words, self-confidence. To get into heaven, we have to let go of that. But it can be a hard thing to give up. Being told that we have to give up our self-confidence can even make us feel that God just wants us to be small so that He can feel bigger. And that's a completely false idea of God. But ideas like that do come to us, and they can be hard to shake. Why is it a problem for us to feel great about our ability and our power? This is yet another instance of the Lord asking us to give up something that feels good, but isn't quite as good as it seems, and offering to replace it with something so much better. And all of that is illustrated in today's story about Gideon. Self-confidence is a hungry thing. It needs to be constantly fed with proofs and assurances. If we don't see ourselves succeeding or flourishing, our self-confidence can quickly start to falter, and it can collapse completely and turn into a quagmire of doubt if the thing that we're good at is somehow taken away from us. In the story, the land of Israel is under attack by the Midianites, who are stealing everyone's food. In a good sense, the Midianites represent truths of faith or religion. But in a negative sense, they represent those same truths when we know them but don't live them. And a truth that we know but don't live gets twisted into a falsity that plagues us. And a falsity that especially afflicts people who know truth but don't live it is the idea that they're more religious, more righteous, more holy, better people because of what they know. That idea can give us a kind of self-confidence, a self-righteous confidence, but it's an illusory confidence, and beneath it we're plagued with anxiety, plagued with hungry raiders like the Midianites who rob us of our joy. The children of Israel believed that they were the chosen people. And you can hear a little bit of an attitude of entitlement in Gideon's words to the angel. Where are the miracles our fathers told us about? The truth was that the children of Israel were not obeying the Lord. They were worshiping false gods, and that's why they were having these problems. They represent a state in us in which we believe that we are the chosen ones, but we're not doing what we should be. And the truth is, we're barely holding on. And the spirit within us is fearful and defeated. When the Lord reaches out to us, He reaches out to a quality that's represented by Gideon. What exactly Gideon represents isn't spelled out anywhere, but clearly he represents the cure to this problem of knowing truth but not living it. He represents the part of us that simply serves the Lord, the part of us that simply does what the Lord says. This part of us, by its own admission, is weak. It's the weakest member of the weakest family. And it feels this way because this part of us that serves the Lord sees the truth. It doesn't distort things by filtering them through pride. It sees that our power to do all that the Lord has asked us is very, very small. And that's okay because our power is not what's needed. The Lord told Gideon that He would save Israel, but He also told him, surely I will be with you. And as we'll see, in the end it was the Lord's power and nothing else that saved Israel. The Lord doesn't need confident heroes, if confident means self-confident. The confidence that we need is confidence in His power to save, and we can have that no matter how weak we feel. The The truth is, we need our God. No matter how strong or weak we think we are, we need Him. And it's a whole lot better to be a weak-feeling person who knows that they need help than to be a strong-feeling person who refuses the help that they need. The Lord comes to a part of us that lacks self-confidence because that's the part of us that's ready to turn to Him. But the other part of this picture is that allowing the Lord to help us doesn't mean that we have to feel weak forever. When we follow the Lord, He gives us confidence, just not self-confidence. There's a parallel here with what the reading said about merit and righteousness. We read that there are two things which all who enter heaven cast aside, namely proprium and consequent confidence, and merit, that's their own, or self-righteousness. They then assume a heavenly proprium which comes from the Lord, and the Lord's merit, or righteousness. So to get into heaven, we have to give up the idea that we're great and pure and good, and with it the idea that we deserve heaven on account of being so great and pure and good. And when we put these ideas away, amazingly, the Lord gives us His own merit and righteousness. He lets us put them on like clothing. His merit and righteousness are real. They're powerful, holy things. And we get to hold that power and that holiness, not because we deserve it, but because it's given to us. And how could someone clothed with the Lord's merit and righteousness not be filled with unshakable confidence? Or more accurately, how could someone clothed with those things not be filled with an unshakable sense of peace? With an unshakable trust that because God is close, everything will be just fine. What's that if not the very best kind of confidence? In the story, Gideon asked the angel of the Lord for a sign, which doesn't seem to show tremendous faith on his part. He wasn't transformed right away into a hero. He wasn't filled all at once with divine confidence. He needed help. He needed some nudges. And the Lord is willing to give us those nudges as long as we're willing to do something with them. So He gave Gideon a sign. When Gideon made an offering, he brought fire from the rock. And that fire represents the love that He kindles in us. When we do what we're asked to do, there's a flame of commitment or of zeal that rises up in response. And it's a good thing, and it's a powerful thing. And it's a sign of the peace and the power and the confidence that will be given to us. So this is just the beginning of the Gideon story, and as we'll see, he remained uncertain for a while yet, and the fullness of the power present with him wasn't revealed right away. But the theme of Gideon's story has been identified. The Lord saves by means of something that feels like it's the weakest of the weak, because that's the part of us that's willing to accept His help. And to that weak part of us that follows Him, the Lord gives His own strength. Even the youths shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Amen.